And welcome to the Critical Blast Caverns. Thank you, everyone who showed up so far. Mr. Jetter, we are afraid. We are very afraid. We're afraid that you'll leave. We don't want you to do that. We want you to stay for the entire show. I am your host, RJ Carter, managing editor here at criticalblast.com, also the author on Warren Murphy's The Destroyer, featuring the books Bully Pulpit and Monumental Terror, and Continental Divide. I always skip that one for some reason. And we have our guest tonight in the house, the one, the only, the ravishing Rob Muerto. We're going to talk about your funded book, Tales from the Classroom. So, Rob, welcome to the show, such as it is.
Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And let's get on with it.
All right.
I don't know if you want me to do a little intro on the book, or if people, or if we're going to do any screen shares, or how the system's going to be set up. But I am your guest, so I'm at your whim.
You can share anything you like. Let's start off with, why are you doing the book? I mean, were you always wanting to do comic books, and then crowdfunding came along, or did you see people doing crowdfunding and say, "Hey, I can draw and write"? Chicken and the egg kind of situation. What came first?
I definitely cannot draw. That's not something that's in my bag of trickery. But I can write, and this is this book is based on a screenplay that I'd written quite a while ago, a decade ago now, and it was actually supposed to be adapted into a comic book. It was going to be published by this minor publisher named Viper Comics that has since collapsed and is no longer with us. So the project fell apart.
So many.
Yeah, like so many, but the project fell apart. But I had like all these pages that I was left with of just pencils, no inks, just pencils, and no inks, no colors. And I sort of I got busy with other things, but then years went by and my son was born, and my wife kept nagging at me saying, you should really take up that comic book again. The kid would really love to see you do something like that. And so after a while, I'm very thankful that she did it, but I gave in and decided to do so. I tracked down the original penciler and asked him if he was up for it, and he was. And then it was just a matter of finding a proper colorist and a good inker, and we did so, and a letterer, of course, and we did so, and now we're here.
Fantastic. Now, Neil Gaiman talks about the well of ideas. I interviewed him years ago about the whole J.K. Rowling, somebody suing her over Muggles and all that, and he's like, well, I'm not she's not the first person to come up with a bespectacled kid who gets trained to be a wizard. Obviously, there was Tim Hunter, but he said there's this well of ideas where at certain times a lot of people will start drawing on what's available and come up with similar ideas. So 10 years ago, you're doing this Tales from the Classroom, which has a zombie lead in it going to high school. What had you to think when not very many years after that, you started seeing stuff like Warm Bodies and hearts and other body parts and all these other things?
It was a big punch to the gut, and I'll tell you something. It was Tales from the Classroom is renamed. The original name of the screenplay and the project in general was Monster High, which has since become a property of Mattel. And as I was pitching the script around LA, because I lived in LA at the time, it was the very first screenplay that I'd written. It was actually an assignment for school and for this screenwriting workshop that I was doing. And but I was excited about the idea of I thought that the solidity of the idea would get people jazzed up and sort of look past my flaws as a screenwriter. It was overwritten. It was like 130 pages when it should be 95 tops, and it was just an amateurishly put together screenplay. But anyway, I was pitching it around town, and then all of a sudden, 3 months into this process, Mattel announced a property named Monster High, with the exact same premise as mine, but a totally different execution. And that was a big punch to the gut originally, because I even thought that they'd stolen it from me or something. That's since been, fortunately, I've put that theory aside. I've discarded that, and nothing. But to go back to the well of ideas that you were talking about, it was just something that was bound to happen, because the reason why this germinated in the first place in my mind was because of I was so befuddled by the Twilight success story, and also to some degree Harry Potter. I never quite understood why it had become such a cultural behemoth. And I tried to pick apart what it was that made these two franchises, resonate at such a wide scale. And to me,
virgin sacrifices.
Pardon?
It was secret virgin sacrifices by the authors.
I think
Everyone
so.
knows that.
I think so. Yeah.
Common knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. No, but to me, I think it boils down to high school being probably the most relatable environment that you could think of. If there's one thing that unites all of us, from the engineer to the carpenter and the taxi driver and whatever, is that we all went to high school and we know what that environment is like. And to have such a relatable environment, you infuse it with a fantastical element. And it becomes a very sort of attractive formula, mix for people. I think that's actually what made Spider-Man such a hit, was that he was really the first superhero in high school. It's not about the spider powers. It's not like people are, inherently attracted to arachnid superpowers or something. It's the superhero in high school element. And the X-Men is the same thing as well.
Yeah, because Peter Parker just, he had to have that life balance there, where he's like, okay, I've got to do these only I can, but I've still got to get my paper written. And while I'm on the way to deliver it, the bully's going to trip me, and I can't hit him because I'll put him through a wall, and there goes my identity.
Yeah, and I think that Spider-Man never. And I think that the Spider-Man never recovered from his, evolution into, going out into the workspace and being a full-time sort of photographer. It was never quite the same. The spirit of Spider-Man was lost.
Yeah,
there was a lot
of. It never made sense after that.
No, it didn't. It's been sort of meandering since.
Well, because as a high schooler, you can assume that he's a child prodigy who, made the web shooters that shoot this fantastic glue out and are electronically double clutch shot out. You're like, well, of course he's going to use it to enhance the superhero. As an adult trying to pay the bills, you're thinking, okay, why are you taking photographs when you should be patenting this thing, going to M and saying, yeah, these glues that you guys make, here's one that does this.
Yeah.
And, cashing checks.
Yeah.
Aunt May doesn't have to worry anymore. You're a genius, you Nimrod. But I can definitely commiserate with the with having Monster High kind of yanked out from under you there. I had a similar situation where 20 years ago, I had done 3 issues of what was supposed to be a 6-issue miniseries for a publisher who went under because he wouldn't pay the artist the page rates, and I had nothing more to do. The artist actually did sample art and character designs, and it was beautiful. Rajiv Golay, he's a great artist out of Nepal. But it was an idea based on the fact that all these kids were getting powers and being yanked into government programs or gifted schools for mutants. And at the rate they were going, there was nobody left in public school. So I had the public schools respond by having extracurricular activities to cater solely to the superpowered population at the high school. It was just Hero Club, Future Superheroes of America. And I had three issues of the script written. I knew all 6 were plotted out. Couldn't do anything with it. Didn't have another publisher. And several years later, you're seeing Tim Allen and what was he doing? Sky High or something like that.
Yeah.
He was the head of a superhero high school.
Right.
Kurt Russell did Sky High.
So. Right. Yeah.
So it's if you don't do it when you've got it, somebody
it happens.
It's
not just about tapping into the ideas. It's about executing them and putting everything, putting all of your energy towards getting it out there. I think there was a little bit of a mini controversy regarding Monster MD. Sorry about that. Monster MD. You're familiar with that, right?
I do. We've had Vaughn on the show.
Yeah, Vaughn's a fantastic guy, and his book looks amazing. But the Twitterverse sort of exploded when they realized that there was a project that was so similar that it was called Monster MD. It's not anywhere near as
similar because there were monsters in it. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. It's nowhere near as interesting, but it's got the same title, and it's and very broadly sort of same premise. But not only did Vaughn come up with his way before, also the execution seems much better as well. I like to think Tales from the Classroom is a lot better executed than Monster High. I think they got confused because at the time Twilight was a big deal. So Mattel went, all right, so I guess girls, tweens like monsters. And we have Barbie as our cash cow. So let's go for that. Let's make it for
make monster Barbies.
Monster Barbies, basically. And it was it's been a success for a while.
Yeah, they got their change out of it.
Yeah, exactly. But it was tough to see that play out. And then Warm Bodies, like you said, very similar to some of the stuff that I'd come up with. And there's even stuff like Hotel Transylvania and things like that. Just anything to do with monsters and always gets me a little iffy. But no longer, because the book is actually coming out now, and I'm happy it's finally out and in people's hands, and they can judge for themselves if they like it more or less than those properties.
Now, what's the world of Tales from the Classroom like? Is it all monsters, or is it a mixed monster-human population?
It's all monsters. There's no humans. So it's
okay.
It's sort of like it's like a mirror universe, but where only monsters exist, and humans are in their imaginations. They're we're the figments of their imagination. They tell scary stories about us. There's an inversion going on. But I don't really like to delve into that too much, and because that confuses people and they get to asking too many questions. But I do allude to it, but very briefly in the book.
Kind of reminds me of one of the alternate Earths in the DC universe that they don't talk about anymore. It was a Super Friends comic book where they fought a Dracula and a Mrs. Dracula and a Frankenstein's monster, and turned out that they were the visiting superheroes of an alternate Earth where the big Frankenstein guy was superior, and the Dracula was calling himself Batman because he could turn into a bat. And their whole world was just our version of universal monsters. But so everybody's a monster, just like watching the Groovy Ghoulies again. That's cool, and it's all different monsters too. So I'm guessing
it's all sorts of
cliques and class warfare.
Pardon?
I'm assuming there's all kinds of the cliques and the class warfares going on. The wolves packed together, and
there is there's that. There's actually a little gang called the Wolfgang. The leaders being Wolfgang, and usually monster species they're very segmented, and there's a lot of segregation between the species. Except when you get to the very top, it's more about like how athletically prodigious you are, or like how wealthy you're, for, like how it is sort of like in real life.
Yeah. Well, the vampire families can consume a lot of wealth because they don't die. They
Exactly.
just keep stocking the money away until
That's
they're
right.
rich. Um, so what are the, and I don't know even know if you to it, what are the families like of these monster kids? Because specifically, I would get very confused watching the Munsters. I'm like, okay, he's a Frankenstein's monster, and she's a Dracula, but their kid is a werewolf. How did that happen? Neither one of them is a wolf.
I actually never watched the Munsters. I have to do that just for basic research.
Oh,
But
you missed out, man.
I missed out. Yeah, but this is so zombies are with zombie. They have like their zombie families. The Wolfmen have their Wolfmen families, and so on and so forth. I don't get into like cross species hybrids. Maybe further down the line, that's something interesting. But I like to keep it simple in this first foray into the universe. And just to give you the basic premise, like premise of the story,
Yeah,
it's
we
it's
built the
centered on
world. Tell a story.
it's centered on Rob, who's this teenage zombie who attends Romero High, and he's the most popular kid there. He's like it's an all zombie high school, and there he's like the Ferris Bueller of that place. He's like an athletic prodigy. The zombie girls love him, all of that. And then
He can shamble faster than anybody.
he can shuffle faster than anybody. Yeah, exactly. And then one day, his father Melvin gets a promotion. He gets to go from janitor to head janitor, but they have to, transfer over to. They move over to like the big city, and he has to transfer over to a new high school that's multi-species, Cthulhu High. And there, like, he finds out to his dismay that no longer is he personally nowhere near as popular as he was before, but also the zombie species in general are perceived as sort of being at the bottom of the social totem pole. And
So why are they?
pardon?
Why are they at the bottom? Is it just because they
It's just
fall
I get
apart and eat?
yeah, because they're slow and they eat brains. They're awkward. They're seen as not being too bright, and yeah, and they have sort of like this hive mind mentality.
I'm just sharing out to Twitter here so everybody can come see us. So hive mind mentality, that's interesting now, though. I mean, so they just kind of naturally congregate together.
They congregate together, and there's more of them than any other species of monster, and they've sort of become content with being at the bottom and not really, standing up for themselves. And then Rob steps in, and his original desire is to climb up the aforementioned totem pole, just strictly out of individual ambition. But then somewhere along the line, it becomes more about galvanizing his species, and he runs for. Well, I'm spoiling actually stuff that's not even in this first book, so like we'll just.
Oh, don't do that! Don't do that.
I won't. No.
So is he like traditional zombies? If he bites somebody, do they go zombified?
No, because that's something
he's just,
that's it's just undead. Yeah. He's just born
right.
Undead.
Yeah. Is this this is already in demand, right? I mean, it's out. It's a done project.
It's in demand. I wanted to fulfill in March. We're having some difficulty because my designer dropped out. The book was totally done, but we need, as you know, to sort out some pre-press issues, and I didn't have the inside front cover, sorry, the inside back cover done. And this guy was working on it,
Okay.
and then he stumbled onto my CG allegiances and decided to drop out. And
Okay. So this is the first time I'm hearing of a book that actually had inner turmoil because of the CG connections.
I've had multiple inner turmoils. I had this guy, this artist that was amazing, that was set to do lots of work for me in the future, and unfortunately he bailed as well. But he wasn't the main artist for the book, fortunately. But he was said to be like, somebody who would write short stories, do a lot of visual development for future installments, because the idea is to flesh out this world as much as possible to get it primed and ready for a TV adaptation, hopefully.
So you're ready to take a finished book and get it out to places like Netflix and such?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of. I always envisioned it as something beyond just the comic book space, but because it's such a visual concept, I think having a comic book, as sort of a visual aid for Hollywood executives, it's always a great way to sell your idea.
Now, are you still out in Los Angeles?
No, no longer.
Okay.
I'm back,
So what is your?
I'm back to Portugal, which is where I'm from.
You're back to where?
Portugal.
Okay, so you're far away from me. We've got an excellent connection. I didn't realize how good this was.
It's been going well, yeah.
So what is your plan then for getting this into the hands of executives? Because I'll tell you, they're so gun shy about taking anything unsolicited. My first book was Alice's Journey Beyond the Moon that I had published by a publisher in England. And when the Disney people came out with Alice Through the Looking Glass, everyone was like, well, that's the only two books that are Alice out there. Obviously, that's going to be the last one they do, 1 and 2. And someone said, well, all these Pirates of the Caribbean stories are being based off of pirate stories that they found somewhere else that they just adapted. Mm-hmm. I tried to get, Beyond the Moon into these writers. I just priority shipped a blank envelope, nothing written in the letter, just here's a book. It's already published. It's not a manuscript. It's a published book. So I'm not like shoving a manuscript in your hands, just letting you know something exists. Returned unopened. They won't touch this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you need to get yourself out there. Like I said, I lived in LA. It helps if you lived in LA or live in LA, because that's sort of the entertainment capital of the world, and everything swirls around the entertainment industry. So you're bound to meet people that they're either connected or can open doors for you. And I have built a pretty solid network that could get it into the hands of the right people. Now, that doesn't mean that it would turn into a show. It's as you know, it's hardly ever a slam dunk like that.
Right, but you're leaps and bounds ahead of the person who doesn't have those connections.
No, but at least I can get eyeballs on it, which is a good thing. But another way you could do it is go to San Diego Comic-Con or something, or like one of these big cons, and get a booth. And a lot of times, because comic books have become such a big deal in the film industry, you see a lot of Hollywood executives sort of snooping around looking for properties that they could option.
Oh, sure. And because it's already storyboarded for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
I go to a few conventions, set up tables, but I'm disappointed with the comic book conventions of late, because there are no comic book companies at them. When I used to go in my 20s, be like, I'd go to ChicagoCon. There's DC with a great big booth. Here's Marvel over here. Archie, for crying out loud, had a table over here that you could go and talk to people. Uh-huh. And now it's like, a bunch of fan artists and some celebrities that are there for 10 minutes to sign pictures. but
Yeah,
there's no
it's
publishers or
crazy.
anything.
It's at least with San Diego Comic Con, it's grown well beyond the comic book thing. It's not only has it grown beyond it, it's I feel like it's the comic book aspect has really fallen to the wayside, because I remember seeing legends of the comic book industry, like, guys like Neil Gaiman, like sitting alone in a booth, like waiting for people to talk to them. You know?
Yeah,
Uh,
it's consumed it.
yeah,
You're
no,
there to
no,
see the movie trailers now.
most of the people that are there don't they don't give a crap. They're just there to see RDJ announce Iron Man 6 or something.
Yeah, exactly. They're there to see the new trailer so they can, take phone shots of it and be the first up on Twitter with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to worry about that. I'm here in the middle of the. I'll never make it to San Diego. I'm lucky to get to Chicago because that's only 5 miles away.
How? Where are you based? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
St. Louis.
St. Louis. Oh, cool.
Yeah, so we get Wizard World, but it's not, again, nobody's there but the celebrities and the retailers of which I am one. I'm one of the retailers. So what are the plans for more Tales from the Classroom? Is this going to be an ongoing?
It's going to be. I'm going to do at least one more comic book. The success of this campaign was very limited. I wish we would have gotten into the double figures, but then again, I didn't get. You know how it is in the crowdfunding space. You need to have the right exposure. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
I couldn't get that this first time around. Get to the big channels to, like your Ethans of the world. He doesn't owe me anything.
Well, you've made it now. You're.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where.
This is it.
This is where everybody starts. It's here, and then Ethan Van Sciver.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it goes.
No, but or even like some of the tertiary. Well, I'll tell you, the biggest YouTube channel I got on was with Sweetcast, actually, and he's great. He's a really nice guy.
We were both on Ethan's channel about a year ago when we were both nobodies, and now 50% success rate. Sweetcast is somebody, but it was a rough time because our first Critical Blast had just branched out into publishing. We started our publishing arm, and we had an anthology called Gods and Services. It was a bunch of little short stories about this pop-up shop, the kind that shows up and then you try to go back to it and you can never find it again. It sells all these little knickknacks, and each one has a god attached to it, and that god, because you bought him or her, is bound to make your life better for the worship you've given, whether you want him or her to or not.
It's a good idea.
We were at a time, my family was living in a hotel, and we were, running out of money and running out of time. We were facing homelessness, and Ethan let me on the show to promote the book, and it helped some, but it did not get like it didn't crack $1,000, but so exposure is not everything. It isn't. Because you get on Ethan's channel isn't there's no guarantee.
But
we're grateful to him for letting us be on there. But yeah, it helped.
But it helps, and then with it's all about that. I mean, it's marketing. It's putting a lot of work into the marketing aspect of it, And
and with comic books, it's definitely good art. I mean, you can have a great story, but if you're looking at flat pastels and kind of looks like somebody sketched it at lunch on Bristol board, really which you do not have. The artwork I've seen from Tales from the Classroom is very sharp. It's very animated cartoon. It doesn't look like it's a lifted animation cell. It looks like it could very easily translate into, I'm going to say Saturday morning cartoon, even though nobody knows what those are anymore. But yeah, it could have been a series of animated monster creatures. Of course, now if you sell it as that and it becomes that, it's going to be a bunch of these bulbous heads with stick bodies, because that's all anybody can draw and animate anymore. So don't do that, please.
It's funny that you mentioned that Saturday morning thing, because I kept pitching it as this would be a great Saturday morning cartoon, and people would look at me like weird. And then I realized that there's no such thing anymore. Yeah, there's either like Cartoon Network.
It's gone. There's a whole channel for it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'm still of the day when that was the whole thing, was Saturday morning cartoons.
Get up before your parents pour a great big bowl of cereal and sit down.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's the idea. The idea is to turn it into a TV show, like a kids TV show, and or not, or whatever. I think it could be even a live action Tim Burton style sort of thing, like what he did with Beetlejuice. I'd love to see that as well. Who knows? Let's see, but it's
or something like Corpse Bride.
But of course, if you're going to pitch anything into a TV show, it needs to have done a little bit better than 3K on the crowdfunding thing.
Yeah. Well, did you make goal?
I did. Yeah. But the goal.
And did you exceed goal?
I did, but the goal, I set the goal very low, exactly so I could do that.
Yeah. If your goal was 500, you made 3,000. You say, hey, this thing exceeded. We had a crowdfunding thing, and it made 600% of what we intended. So you don't go with the actual dollars, you go with the percentage.
Yeah, no, the primary objective is to get the book into people's hands and sort of build a fan base, and for that fan base to get vocal and then make the second one a bigger success, and then take it from there. If it keeps growing incrementally, then the idea is to close out at 4 books and then compile everything in a sort of omnibus edition. But
4 books would be nice. It'd be like, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year.
Right. Yeah. It's not split like that. It's going to be 1 semester, but that would be a good idea. And it's about 42 pages each, around that page mark. And yeah, should be a really solid, chunky book if we get to doing all 4.
Are you doing with standard comic book printing as far as the cover and the paper goes? Are you getting a little bit of a thicker cover for more of a graphic novel feel?
I'm getting a little fancy with the cover. A thick paper stock with spot gloss, bells and whistles, and all of that.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not, I'm not operating at a profit at the moment, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But it's okay. You got to spend money to make money,
Yes, I'm finding that out because, like I said, we've opened up our publishing arm, and in fact, I'm going to take a minute to shill here. If I can just, yes, it's within reach. Thank goodness. Last time it was not. We have hot off the presses and available on Amazon. Our first hardcover, not a graphic novel, but a literal YA, it's all words novel. Superhero young adult novel, Bulletproof. This is Bulletproof Origins, book 1 by Stephen J. Mitchell.
It's like a cop with superpowers?
It's a high school student with superpowers.
High school student, all right, sorry. Yeah, I get it.
He is young Cody is 16 years old. He wakes up and finds out he's bulletproof. Unfortunately, he has the attention span of a ferret on pixie sticks, and it's a focus problem for him. So he deals with that while dealing with a band of terrorists who have also found out that he is bulletproof and would really like to dissect him and get that secret for themselves. This adventure, Mitchell is working on the second book right now, and he is we'll be going to soft cover with this probably the next 5 to 6 months, and hopefully releasing the next hardcover around the same time. So if you like that kind of thing, folks, the link is in the description. But the very first link, of course, is going to be to the Indiegogo for Rob Muerto's book, Tales from the Classroom. Definitely hit that up, fill out that on demand, put some more money in those coffers.
I'm going to check.
Get this
I'm going
book
to
out
check
there.
your projects out. So you
Yes.
have multiple things going on. I didn't realize that.
Well, we are also reading for our next anthology, which we're reading through the end of April for our next fantasy anthology called The Devil You Know. And we're taking stories through the end of April right now. We have a ton of stories. When we did Gods and Services, it was our first, and nobody knew who we were. We didn't even know if the project was going to be a success. And stories in there, probably 30 submissions. So we had a pretty good ratio of good writing. We had, of course, because of criticalblast.com. And if you can't buy anything at all, folks, just visit the website, because just passing through kind of drops a few pennies into us from ad revenue. That's how it works. But because of that, we had done reviews of other people's work, and I had contacts with them. So I had contacts with people like Ira Bloom, who had done, funnily enough, a high school story about monsters called Hearts and Other Body Parts. And I said, hey, would you like to, do this, do a short story for us? And, it's like, it's $20 and a copy of the book. And he's like, yeah, I'd love to. So we got him in there. We have David Peterson, who's done the Angst series of books, who I've met at conventions multiple times. He has a short story in there. Michael Tierney, John Delaraz has a story in there. So that gave gravitas to the new writers that we were really trying to reach out to say, hey, look, not only have I been published, but I've been published alongside these people here. This is a real book, and these are real authors. And, obviously I did not pay to have myself put in here. These are big guys. Well, now that we've done that, we put out a call for The Devil You Know. We've got about 100 submissions to ferret through when we close out, and we're still getting 2 or 3 a week. And these are quality submissions. I'm reading these resumes like, I've been published in this, and I'm like, I know this, and this. Yeah, you had a Simon & Schuster novel and you're coming to me? Okay, great. I love it.
That's crazy, huh? Crazy.
It's crazy. Very crazy.
It's crazy how much talent there is out there. And if only you put the feelers out, all of a sudden with the internet, which is a blessing, because none of this would be possible, like, pre-internet. Me getting in touch.
It would have been a lot more harder.
It would have been a nightmare. And just the amount of artists that aren't being that are Marvel, DC, big 2 level quality, and they don't have a job, and they're looking for like a hand that feeds, basically.
Exactly. Doing commissions on Twitter.
All of that.
How did you work things out with your artists for Tales from the Classroom? Because I know almost everyone I've talked to, from the buying side, you're thinking, well, okay, if they don't fund, then they're not out any money. But what they don't realize, I think, is from the creative side, and you might be in the same boat, is that the writer, to be able to even start a campaign and show stuff, is out of pocket already, because you had to pay that artist for that. They don't go in on spec.
I didn't, but the pencils that I had were actually the remnants from the Viper Comics project. But the way that the deal was structured back then was that I paid him anyway, so it was, it was mine. It was my work. I had ownership over it. So I tracked him down basically just to see if he would finish. Not finish. He would redo some of the panels that I wasn't happy with, and do some promotional pinups, and that's what we've been doing. And we've been working on the second chapter of the book mostly. That's how it worked out.
Well, his work is very good. I would not be a bit surprised to find him in demand for other siege, other philosophical crowd projects. They're not every crowdfunding project CG. I realize that. It's just the most talked about one, I guess.
No, the CG affiliation is just my own. Nobody else is affiliated.
I've been following CG for a while. I have a ton of people who come on who are CG, a bunch who are not. I'm not, because I don't create comic books, but I like everybody. So whenever these splits come out, and it's Ethan and John and Mike Miller, I'm like,
it's a
I'm
nascent.
sitting in the back seat like, I hate when mommy and daddy fight.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nascent movement, and there's a lot of. I came into it late. From what I understood ideologically, I aligned myself with it, and that's why I chose to take on that mantle. But there does seem to be a lot of infighting, and I don't know what's going to happen with the movement in the first place. But
it's
and I like
Ethan, because
I like Ethan a lot.
Following accounts, we've lost accounts.
Yeah, and I like Ethan a lot. He seems to be sort of like the flagship of the movement, and he seems like a stand-up guy. And I think the way that he was blacklisted from the industry was really shitty for expressing his political view.
Sure.
And I don't think somebody like that should.
I've been following his channel.
Yeah, tell me.
I've been following his channel for a long time, at least 2 years now. And if you want to be good at broadcasting, good at public speaking, Ethan's channel is a case study. If you go back 2.5 years ago and watch his channel, you can definitely see the level of comfort and, dare I say, professionalism grow from that point to where he is now. He's a lot more comfortable behind the microphone. He's more being himself, and it's a lot like Toastmasters. I'm a big Toastmasters evangelist. I've been in that club for years now, Toastmasters International, and I told him flat out. I said, you've really improved your public speaking, the way you approach things, and it's all because of repeated practice over and over and over, and learning from mistakes.
It is that, and he's also I think naturally he also has a very large personality that's that fits what he's doing. He's an interesting guy. He's witty. He's smart, and he's brash to some, but that's what gets people engaged. You don't want people
exactly
on a microphone going like I would.
Well, and the thing is that only goes away with practice. So even the most brash personalities can clam up when they get behind the microphone and they realize, oh, I'm speaking publicly to lots of people. What's the thing is, it's when they did a poll of people's fears, fear of public speaking, more people had that than they had of dying. So basically, at any funeral, most people would rather be the person in the coffin than the guy delivering the eulogy.
Yeah, I hate public speaking as well. And you see, actually, you see war veterans that went through hell and went to hell and back, and probably some of the bravest people you could imagine. And then they get shaken up when they're forced to do some public speaking. It's something that you have to condition yourself to not give, not pay any mind to, really. You just have to see the audience as like
exactly
an amorphous blob.
For me, the trick was seeing individuals in the audience. I would focus on a person, and I'd focus on another person. I would never focus on the crowd until it didn't bother me anymore being out there, and then I could speak in front of auditoriums and not have much of a problem. It really helps because I can run panels at conventions now when I go and just talk to the entire audience. I haven't gotten rid of all my ums and ahs, but they're a little bit more natural now than they are the filler word while I think of what to say. I got past that.
Yeah.
So you should get a channel, man. You should get a channel.
I am. I'm trying to work. I'm trying to work up to it, but I've noticed that doing these interviews, my filler word is
Yes, that's another one. And there I go doing it. In Toastmasters, what they do is they have somebody follow your speeches rather, and evaluate them, and they keep a little tick mark of saying, "Hey, this is your word. You said 5 ums, you said 3 uhs, you said 27 so's, and one and you're like, oh, 27 so's. That's really something I do feel that. And so I should, oh, there I go again. And you start to catch it, you start to hear it, and you stop yourself. It's really, really powerful training for $35 a year. It's nothing. There's a Toastmasters club near you.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm looking it up now. Yeah, I mean, it's probably not near Portugal, but it seems like
it's international.
Oh, is it really?
No, it's all over the world. I guarantee you, there's 100 clubs in Portugal if there's one.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, definitely check it out. Get a channel up top.
Sorry.
Yeah, just get a channel up and start talking to the book up. Just 5 minutes a night.
Yeah, I did a Cyberfrog review the other day, which was
perfect.
Which was cool to get it all done in one take, and try to avoid too much dead airspace. And I think I did a fairly good job. Not bad. Could be a lot better, but it's my first effort, so I'm a little bit proud of it. but yeah, I'm going to do my own channel. And the idea is to get like all these people that I'm doing live streams with, and of course here, I'd love for you to feature as well, so you can plug your projects and tell us more about them. And yeah, get all the people that have been gracious enough to have had me on their live streams, and pay it forward, and also build my own audience in the process.
That's how the online community's been growing. It's just been everybody gets on everybody else's show, and it just cycles around and it grows wider. So I think we're in the middle of, despite all the infighting, I think we're in the middle of a renaissance period for comic books. Despite all the decline that's going on in the industry, everything that's going on with crowdfunding and all this new diverse material that's coming out in comic book form is just something I haven't seen since the mid 80s. And Eastman and Laird started doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Frank Miller started doing Ronin, and all this stuff popped up that was no longer superhero.
Right. And those are the people that inspired all the indie creators. So we're all everybody's still trying to like recapture that TMNT lightning in a bottle, but it doesn't happen often, obviously. But
it doesn't happen often. But I think we're there. I think we're on the cusp of it again. If we haven't passed the cusp already, I think something in all this crowdfunding is going to strike a chord somewhere and become the next big thing. And the story will be that it came out of crowdfunding, not out of standard industry comic book mainstream publishers.
I think I'm curious,
Rob,
once these major players, the mainstream guys, start migrating to the crowdfunding space, if that's going to help out the little fish, or if they're just going to gobble them up, you know what I mean?
It probably depends on who the mainstream player is. I think you ask anybody in the crowdfunding scene who's been following it, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, we've got, here's a guy who did a bunch of work for company A, and he's great in crowdfunding. He's fun to work with, and I hope to work with him again. And then you'll say, oh yeah, this guy came in and saw crowdfunding happening, so he jumped out of company B and decided he'd become a millionaire and acted like he was all one of us, and then he made his project, and then he dumped us, and he's off on his own doing mainstream stuff again.
Right.
So yeah, it's all depending on the personality of the artist.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, it has been a pleasure. Love talking about the book with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hopefully, we will definitely have you on again. Get the second show us on that, and we will be pimping it and promoting it.
Yeah, and I'll be in touch with you to see if you'll feature in mine. Thank you. Bye. Thanks for having me.
We absolutely will. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Good night.